You mentioned before that if this technology comes into reality, it runs the risk to be used by not yet prepared, correctly and spiritually not yet prepared people because it is available. The idea is maybe the technology in itself is only understood by people on that right level and cannot be used because it is not understood.
Technology of second tier?
Yes.
Technology...
For example, communicating without needing that stuff we need today.
Technology, here's part of the problem, just very briefly. It took a certain amount of genius to produce, I use a gross example just to get the point across. I use an American example because that, to produce a six-gun, the revolver, okay? The Colt, Samuel Colt invented the revolver. And what happened in this country, that's a technology that the actual mental, cognitive level required to produce that was at least formal operational. It was actually dipping into the equivalent of almost a yellow technology, but it was a very, very high cognitive capacity to produce that revolver. Anybody could use it. Now, I'm going to use spiral dynamics as it's just sort of the altitude and not, because spiral dynamics, the line refers predominantly to value structures. But the equivalent of orange cognition produced the revolver. Somebody who was purple can use a revolver. Somebody who's red can pick it up and shoot you. Somebody who's blue can pick it up and shoot you. Somebody who's orange can pick it up and shoot you. They don't know how to produce it, have to know how to produce it. They can simply do that. There was a saying in America, what happened in the wild, wild west that the revolver did was quite astonishing. Because keep in mind that what America did, just so you all don't know, in 1861, the United States got involved in a civil war. And half the country split from the other half. What did happen is that we educated every young male and taught them how to kill. So we had several million young males, all taught to kill, all heavily armed, and turned loose on each other for 5 years. The battles that we got in 3-day battles, more American males were killed than they were killed in all of Vietnam. In Gettysburg, in 3 days, over 50,000 males were killed. Now, if you do the math and imagine that, certain of the fields, cow pastures, fields like that, had so many dead bodies you could walk from one end of the field to the other and never touch the ground. It's nothing but human flesh. Now, in 1865, when the war was over, and what was left of American males, all of whom were armed and taught how to kill, we just said, well, go west. So every one of them, heavily armed, went west. And that's how we got the Wild, Wild West. It was an absolute bloody nightmare. But what happened was, there was a saying. God might have created all men equal. Samuel Colt made them equal. And so it's a long dissertation on what technology can do. It doesn't matter whether you can invent the thing or not. An artifact is something anybody can pick up and use. Now, artifacts get more complex by the time we get to an atomic bomb. Then you have to know how to push a button in order to make it work. And then off it goes and so on. So anybody can use artifacts, whether they're at the level of consciousness that produce them. Most of the ills of modernity that romantics or blame, and even the critics of modernity, starting with Heidegger and so on, most of the ills of modernity are not really the orange product of orange. They're orange technology in the hands of purple and red and blue. And that produces, it's the drives of those levels that produce the disasters. And so what we're talking about here is, what if we have technology that can start to even, induce certain other kinds of fairly high situations, possibly even brain-mind machines and stuff like that. Almost anybody can get these things and use them. Technology can be an extraordinary benefit, but it's the first thing in history that can be animated by levels of consciousness much, much lower than those that produced it. And so this is part of the problem that you're talking about. And as we get into, as you say, second-tier technology, technology that actually could be produced by people at that level and that can induce various things at that level, it's not going to be used if there isn't a level of communication that can rise to that level and understand it. So it's a real issue, and it's something that we're going to have to face, and I don't know exactly what's going to happen. So we're going to find out, I suppose.